If you're an agent right now, you may have more questions than you do answers, and your confidence may be eaten by gaps you didn't create, but you are expected to fill because we are in a structural reset. And if the people in charge won't take a position or don't take a position, agents inherit that ambiguity. Welcome to Renovating Real Estate. I'm Sandy McMaster. Each week here, we renovate the way real estate operators think, decide, and execute. We do so using the identity ops method because most people never operationalize what truly makes them different. And if there were a time to operationalize that, it is now. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the stance gap that exists right now. What happens when brokers or association execs, owners, what happens if they don't speak plainly and agents and consumers begin to fill that vacuum? Quick break and we'll get to it. Okay, let's start here. The post-lawsuit landscape, it really didn't just change compliance. It changed the social contract. It forced a more explicit conversation around value. Who creates it? Who owns it? And how do we serve the public as well as one another? Now you layer on top of that the other two forces that are hitting at the same time, one being what I'll call cyclical contraction. We could do a whole podcast about that, but let's call it down to two. One, cyclical contraction, and number two, structural change. You put AI collapsing basic expertise into what is basically a commodity. Okay, you take those things, cyclical, structural, AI, commoditization. That is not just a rough patch, my friends. This is a reordering. And I don't believe any of us can market our way out of a value problem. But if you know your value, then I do believe you can build your way out of it. So if you're willing to take a position and articulate it, okay, there's something there. And that's the part of this podcast that's worthy. It's going to apply in two directions: agent to consumer, and broker or agent, or broker or owner to agent. But when the ground is shifting like it is, agents are living inside that blast radius every day in a very palpable way. I'm not suggesting that brokers aren't. You are right. They're walking beside us. But we're the ones carrying the reputational risk in a conversation that we didn't even design. So what's changed? So far, I see this as three compressions. First, there's an information advantage collapse, and I think that is why so many are rushing towards private listing networks. They're trying to recreate a listing book as if it's like a moat. But that's a podcast for another day. I digress. But we all have more context. We all have more comparisons now. And the AI-assisted interpretation, but interpretation in and of itself, it isn't even neutral. Consumers are going to get biased AI advice as much and just as always as they're going to get biased human advice. And the agents, we're not immune either. From here forward, we aren't required to just have general knowledge, market knowledge, industry knowledge. We need to have judgment under uncertainty. And that's a tall order, especially when you and I both know most agents are just struggling to keep up in the best of times, right? But now we have this uncertainty all around us, and we are required to have judgment under that uncertainty. So for agents, this means your claims are going to get sanity checked by consumers instantly. And for brokers and owners, agents are going to sanity check your stance instantly too. Not necessarily your marketing, your stance. So do you have one? Do you hold it? Do you teach it? And that's just the first. That is just the first one. The second one, attention. Attention has gotten really expensive. Every channel is more crowded and it's a little less forgiving, and you can feel it. And it doesn't mean marketing is dead. No, not at all. It means marketing no longer gets to be a substitute for clarity or a clear offer. For agents with consumers, that means your content cannot compensate for a weak offer. And for brokers and owners to agents, that means recruiting and retention narratives about culture won't compensate for loosely held opinions or weak training. If the why us story is just polished, but the stance is really just mushy, and the training is thin, agents know, they feel it. And they respond by looking elsewhere for orientation or the ability to have judgment under uncertain times. And that's the second compression. The third compression in the post-lawsuit, pre-AI era has to do with the trust threshold. It has risen considerably. In uncertainty, consumers stop paying for things like just simple charisma, and agents leave under loosely held beliefs. Both start paying for steadiness, judgment, risk reduction. And when it feels like nobody's in charge, when it feels like mom and dad are fighting while the house is on fire, people don't stay neutral. They fill in the vacuum with their own story, and that story rarely instills confidence. And that's what's different now. People don't just want information. They have it in spades. They want a competent read on reality. And I'm not saying we turn real estate sales meetings into group therapy. No. I'm saying just an acknowledgement of what is. An orientation and a clear stance are a part of the job for all of us now, for agents with consumers and for brokers and owners with agents. Because if you won't name what's changing, if you won't explain, how are you interpreting all of this? And if you won't choose a direction publicly, everyone else will write the story for you. It's already been written. Agents are going to source their certainty somewhere else. Information is abundant. There are people expressing their opinion loudly, and that's where agents will go. And that does not instill confidence. So what breaks when no one will take a position? It's usually presented as if it's a marketing problem, but it's not. It's not. First, we need to acknowledge that agents today are inheriting ambiguity. And when the standards aren't stated, the agent becomes an interpreter. They become a buffer and a liability sponge. I don't know any agent who wants to be a buffer or a liability sponge. But without stated standards, that's what they're having to come up with. So training degrades into tactics, and without a stance or without training, you get scripts Instead of creating agents who have clarity and the ability of judgment, good judgment, instead of getting decision frameworks, they're getting content ideas. The organization, in a lot of circumstances, I see a lot of people start to substitute performance instead of teaching competence. And lastly, after all of that, after all of these compressions, what do you think happens? Well, of course, the business begins to drift. And here's the question agents can feel, even if no one asks it directly out loud. But what's your offer? Who do you serve? What do you protect? What do you prioritize? What do you refuse to do? If that isn't clear, nobody is leading. Everyone is reacting. So what holds up? What really holds up in a state of change like this? I think there's three things: a promise, some proof, and a process. When the world gets more chaotic, I hate to say that out loud, but is it possible? Maybe. If the world gets more chaotic, the temptation among many is to do just more, just publish more, perform certainty. But the stabilizer is not volume. It's actually providing more of like an architecture, a structure. So here's my belief around what promise, proof, and process actually mean. It's a business with a promise is one that can explain itself without being theatrical. A promise is a bounded, specific claim about who you help and what changes because you exist. A promise creates expectations you and your people can actually meet. That's just the promise. Here's the proof. The proof is a visible evidence trail. Standards, column receipts, as the kids say, standards, receipts, outcomes, your decision logic. Because in an AI era where everyone can sound plausible, proof why you believe what you believe is how you avoid becoming just interchangeable or commoditized. And lastly, your process, it needs to be a reviewable method, not just a personality-based experience. Systems that reduce risk, improve over time, and can be coached. And I'll add one more important layer to all of this. In the social contract between all of us, conviction, I think it's just permission to play now. You got to have it. You got to have it. What's your stance? What do you believe is happening right now? What are you optimizing for? Transactions or training? What are the trade-offs you're willing to make that it might hurt? It might hurt today, but keep you in business in the next decade. Conviction that isn't just merely ego or bravado. I mean, it's the kind of conviction that is orienting for those around you. It's what stops your people and your clients from having to guess. Oh, what a relief, right? If you want the full, deeper breakdown, it's all in the essay. But here's the landing for this. This restructure, it is survivable for some, not all. For the ones who are willing to build, they're going to build a promise, they're going to show some proof, and they're going to have a process. And oh yeah, they're going to have a lot of conviction. I almost said a swear word. Not going to do that. They're going to have a lot of conviction. But the rest are going to keep polishing their message while the fundamentals actually drift. You can subscribe to the Substack for the full essay and the tools behind it. And if this did hit a nerve, please rate, review, forward the show to an operator who's been trying to lead through what is a very, very foggy time with a flashlight. Tell them I see them. Send them this podcast. And if you want the full operating system, that is what Identity Ops is for. Until next week, my friends, operate with conviction. Till next week.